Next, we're going to look at the objectives for today's workshop. We will be focusing on the role of the citizen planner and what a planning commissioner needs to know. I know we have a lot of staff in the audience, and much of this information is just as important to staff as well as planning commissioners. This is a Maryland planning commissioner, so we're really going to be honing in on the role of the citizen planner. We will not be going into depth on any of the comprehensive plan elements, but I will share resources that you can use to learn more about the specific requirements of a few elements. And the Maryland Department of Planning will be developing element-specific training over the next year or so, as we anticipate a lot of new comprehensive plans in the years following the release of the decennial census. This workshop also does not go into specific planning strategies, trends, or programs. It focuses on process rather than plan content. And something that I will be coming back to repeatedly: when in doubt, check with your jurisdiction's attorney. We will be talking about state requirements here, processes, but a lot of this stuff is determined locally, and we always recommend you check in with your town, municipal, county attorney. All right, so what is a comprehensive plan? Any planner studying to take the AICP exam can tell you that much of what we consider planning today can trace its roots to the U.S. Department of Commerce's Standard Zoning and Planning Enabling Acts of the 1920s, which provided states with model acts through which they could enable zoning, organize planning commissions, and formulate comprehensive plan requirements in their codes. Maryland passed its own Enabling Act in 1933. All right, what's the purpose of comprehensive plans? All right, one is continuity. Planning is a long-range endeavor. Elected and appointed officials, staff, and stakeholders change over time. A comprehensive plan provides a roadmap that community members and representatives can use for making decisions and guiding growth even as the players come and go. Over time, a community may wish or need to change the direction of a plan, and we will discuss opportunities and requirements for plan updates and amendments. Every community has competing interests: property rights versus the desire to preserve rural land, the need for more housing versus the concern for greater density. A comp plan, while no means a solution to everything, can help balance the needs and interests of a diverse community. It seeks to strike a balance among many competing demands on land by creating development patterns that are orderly, rational, and understood. A comprehensive plan can also protect public investments. A community should avoid digging up last year's new sidewalks to install even newer water lines. Planned, orderly, and phased developments are less expensive for providing public services. Planning can also protect and enhance valued resources. These could be environmental, important economic drivers and anchor institutions, or resources that support an equitable and sustainable community, such as transit and affordable housing. It can also help shape community appearance. This is obviously a matter of taste, but one that can be determined by the community as part of the comprehensive planning process. Design or other guidelines can foster a sense of place. All right. Comprehensive plans can also promote economic development. This could be in high quality office space, the revitalization of a dilapidated shopping center, or even workforce development. A comprehensive plan can drive location decisions of firms and establish programs for encouraging economic development. It can also provide justifications for decisions. It's something for staff and officials to point to when making those decisions. A comp plan provides a factual and objective basis to support zoning decisions and can be used to defend those decisions if challenged in court. And finally, it can help express a collective vision. It provides citizens an opportunity to brainstorm, debate, and discuss the future of their community. And the more input, the stronger the community support will be, both for the plan itself and for implementation of it in the years that follow. So now we're going to switch to comprehensive planning specifically in Maryland. Maryland comprehensive plans are required to implement the 12 visions. The land use article describes each vision in a little more detail. They started as seven visions with the Economic Growth, Resource Protection, and Planning Act of 1992, and subsequent legislation has raised the number of visions to 12. So as you're working on your comprehensive plan, you can always ask yourselves, is it implementing these visions? The local government and land use articles include most of the state planning requirements for Maryland jurisdictions. Throughout today's workshop, we will be reviewing and discussing state code requirements. However, they are only state requirements. Many jurisdictions have their own additional local requirements that a comprehensive plan or planning process must also meet. And I encourage you to consult with your attorney on what those are. As I mentioned, I'll be coming back to that idea multiple times. What we discussed today will probably be most applicable to non-charter counties and municipalities. There's a map here on the right showing you breakdown of counties in Maryland. Much of the content requirements for charter county comp plans are comparable to those for non-charter counties and municipalities, but the process is determined by the charter and other local regulations. And again, both charter and non-charter counties, as well as municipalities, must implement the 12 visions in their comprehensive plans. As I mentioned earlier, today's workshop will not delve into the details of the elements. The land use article provides some insight on the requirements of each, although I will discuss briefly the limitations of those details. These are the ones for non-charter counties and municipalities. I call these the if-then elements. If current geological information is available, a mineral resource element is required. If it's a municipality, a municipal growth element is required. And if the plan for a county is located on tidal waters, shall include a fisheries element. But the land use article serves as a framework for state requirements, but much of the language is vague and open to interpretation. It is not a planning cookbook that will tell you exactly what you need to do. This is something else I suggest that you consult your attorney about. For example, what is an innovative technique or a streamlined review? Right? This should be discussed and determined locally. The comprehensive planning process is more circular than it is linear. There's no clear point A to point Z. Rather, stakeholders, staff, officials, and others should establish an iterative communication and feedback process throughout plan development. There are multiple ways a community can prepare a comprehensive plan, and the most important thing is that people read the plan and reference it regularly during plan implementation, whether that is during a comprehensive rezoning, reviewing and approving a site plan, or starting a new program. Comprehensive plans should reflect the community and its ethos. Eric will be discussing an iterative process in more detail later. Here's an overview of the state agency review process. Probably heard of the 60-day review. So 60 days prior to the public hearing, a planning commission is required to send our department a draft plan for review. I'll be talking about this more later. On day one, we send it to our internal divisions for review, but also our sister agencies. Approximately day 30, they send their comments back to us. Our regional planners then consolidate these into one review. And by day 60, we send it to the jurisdiction, who then is required to include that in the public record for the public hearing, the planning commission public hearing. They should also be, on day 60, sending it to adjoining jurisdictions for their feedback and comments. All right, now we're gonna talk about planning to plan. What you do in preparation when you know a comprehensive planning process is coming up. We suggest you start with what you already have. All right, first, do you need a new comprehensive plan? House Bill 409 from 2013 changed the comprehensive plan review cycle from 6 to 10 years, but it also requires a 5-year implementation report. This image on the right is a document in 2015 that the Maryland Department put together to help jurisdictions with these questions. All right, planning recommends that a planning commission use the checklists to first determine if they should update the comprehensive plan. I'm going to show you a little bit more about the checklist on the next page. But to also use the checklist questions to discuss what they should consider changing in a new comprehensive plan. We think these checklists and this document are helpful even if you know you're going to be doing a new comprehensive plan. You should start with what you already have. So here's some examples of the checklist in that document. All right, does the comprehensive plan include all the required elements? Right, just in 2019, the General Assembly added the requirement for a housing element, went into effect a little over a year ago. All right, so that's a question to ask yourself. Do our annual reports identify issues of concern? Right, are there certain trends that we're seeing that the current comprehensive plan is not addressing? We probably need to update. All right, do we have any new designations? Sustainable communities through DHCD or historic districts or others that weren't addressed in the previous comprehensive plan. These are probably focus areas for a new updated version, new updated comp plan. There are other questions to consider as well. All right, what are the population statistics and demographics telling us, especially with the new census information coming out? How has our growth rate changed since the last comprehensive plan? And do we have enough available land for the desired development? These questions spark local dialogue that can help really create the foundation for pre-planning and the plan itself. You also want to consider other plans. Water and sewer plans are closely tied. These are county plans, but they're closely tied to development and comprehensive plans at both the municipal and county level, and they're required to be consistent. Have there been any market studies or economic analyses done in our community, either regionally or for the whole jurisdiction, or maybe for Main Street, that it will inform a comprehensive plan? You also probably want to look at other comprehensive plans. Those of your neighbors, have they, are they planning to grow or develop infrastructure in a way that may impact us? But not just your neighbors, you might want to look at other comprehensive plans from other jurisdictions for new ideas, even outside of the state of Maryland. How do they organize it? What were their strategies? What were their processes? Maybe it can spark some ideas for you to consider. If you want to develop and express a collective vision, you need to involve as many individuals and groups that have a stake in the growth and development of your community as possible. This is not only residents, but also the businesses and those who invest in your community. Nonprofits and organizations that dedicate their resources to your community, but also your neighboring jurisdictions. And your stakeholders are both internal and external when it comes to government agencies. You want to look at different, this is not just a planning department endeavor. You want to discuss it with other agencies, departments within your local government. Advisory groups are essential to a comprehensive planning process. Staff and officials do not hold a monopoly on local insight or organizational capacity. Advisory groups can generate new ideas, describe conditions on the ground, assist with outreach and communications, and provide feedback on deliverables throughout the planning process. And they should be involved from the beginning to the end. I recommend a plan to complete the plan in the form of a charter or framework or whatever other name you want to give it. The advisory group can help you with this, and you can also share it with the community early in the planning process. Questions asked are, what existing plans will be studied to inform the planning process? How will the staff planning team be organized? Not just the staff team, the advisory team, other stakeholders brought on board. When will we complete the existing conditions analysis? How long will community outreach last? And when will we have a draft ready for formal review? Comprehensive plans are complicated, they take a long time, and there's always twists and turns. So it's unlikely that you'll be able to follow your framework letter to letter, minute by minute, but it's still good to have this framework in place so you can continue moving forward. So what is the role of the citizen planner in early stages? The Planning Commission should be involved early and throughout. One key aspect that they can help with is analyzing consistent issues that they've had to deal with over the years that could be alleviated by a new and revised plan. Are there an excessive amount of variances or special exceptions on the Planning Commission agendas? Does the Planning Commission find itself having to work harder than it should to approve developments that would benefit the community because the regulations are inflexible? They can also help with advisory groups and the consultant selection. Many of you are probably familiar with SWOT analyses, which are a tried and true exercise that staff and Planning Commission can work on together to frame some initial themes and focus areas for a comprehensive plan. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So what are your strengths? Maybe you have abundant open space. Let's build upon that. What are our weaknesses? We have great open space, but our Main Street is struggling. We want to look at that. What opportunities are out there? Well, we're having strong residential demand. But the threat perhaps caused by that residential demand is rising housing prices. So when you ask these questions, you go through this analysis early. It'll help frame or focus some of the areas you want to look at. You also might want to consider consultants. The pre-planning informs the need for a consultant, if any. All those exercises you've already gone through. Now, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do we have local capacity to do this in-house? If not, you might want to consider a consultant. Consultants may provide objectivity or an outside perspective that's needed. They could have done plans elsewhere, right? They can bring new ideas to your community. Something else you can think about is maybe you can procure the services of a consultant for only one or a few of the more technical comp plan elements, such as the water resources or transportation elements, and you don't need them for the whole plan. And finally, probably the most important question is, do we have the funding or can we find some? We'll briefly go over requests for proposals if you do decide to go with a consultant. You want to have a variety of writers You want to make sure you include the desired outcome and deliverables for the final plan, be this or for their work, be it one specific element or the whole plan. You really want to clarify the role of the staff versus the consultant. Obviously, lay out the budget, and if you have, say, you have specific funding requirements, or you are receiving some funding from a funding agency. What are the requirements of that agency? And then you obviously want to learn about their future or the projects they've completed in the past and any references. You want to leverage a variety of distribution methods and procurement platforms. You want to send your RFPs far and wide. You need to be proactive. You can put it on your website, but don't think that that is nearly enough. You also have to understand and abide by local procurement requirements. Another time that you need to check with your local attorney. I put some links here on some potential resources or websites and state agencies and others that you can help you spread your RFP, or get the word out about your RFP. And then when you get those proposals in, you need to be set up a clear, direct process for selecting a vendor. What are your criteria? Right, your review team should know this. If your budget is particularly constrained, right, price, the lowest bidder might be the most important factor. Right, but you also want to look at the quality of their work, their demonstrated past performance. You want to set up a scoring system, and this should be understood by everybody reviewing the RFP, the proposals. And you want to have a mixed review team. All right, so what are some funding resources for comprehensive plans? It would be great if there were more, but I'll go over a few that we have listed here. And these are all linked as well later on when we send you the presentation. You can review them. So there's some funding through the Community Development Block Grants, or CDBG. This is available for non-entitlement communities that have 51% or more low or moderate income persons. So there is a specific list of eligible jurisdictions, which I'm not going to go over now, but when you get this presentation, you can look at those list of eligible jurisdictions. This funding is allocated annually for planning and is separate from the normal block grant cycle. And you need to know to ask about it. Cindy Stone is the Director of Community Development Programs. Her email is linked there. I told her that I was going to let you all know about this, and she said it was okay to contact her. So this is available upon consultation with Cindy. So you need to reach out to her first. Another potential is the Grants Gateway. This is funding available for planning that addresses hazard mitigation, sea level rise, and climate change. And the funding could be used for whole or part of the plan, but it depends on how many of the resiliency elements are included. So if you know that you're going to be addressing one of these specific topic areas in your comprehensive plan, it's worth pursuing Grants Gateway funding. It may only be available for that section, but maybe you could use that funding for a consultant that will focus on that portion. And then there's the American Rescue Plan. This is not yet fully clear. We're still looking into this, and the interim rule is out right now. I think final comments on the interim rule are actually due today. It might be this weekend. I can't remember exactly. It's not yet fully clear, but if you look at that interim rule, it says that funding is available for planning or an analysis to improve programs addressing the pandemic. And this could be not only recovery efforts, but planning for future pandemics or community jurisdiction post-pandemic. So we're still looking into this, and we'll let you know once we find out more. But there's also a website linked here. It's Maryland's local fiscal recovery funds website that has a lot more information. It links to Treasury's website as well. And then finally, if you're a municipality, I strongly recommend you contact your counties, because many counties may have funding, at least technical assistance, to assist with municipal comp plans. All right, now we're going to switch to outreach and engagement. All right, I think of outreach and engagement as three parts: communications, outreach, and engagement itself. We're going to start out with communications. This is what you say. This is, in my opinion, this is the first thing you do. All right, you need to, essentially, why should stakeholders engage? This includes, why are we doing this? Our themes, frequently asked questions, any aspect of community education you're developing. And you also want to talk about protocol and message control, right? You want to have standard messages that your stakeholders, when they go out and your partners, when they go out and talk about it, right? They're staying on message. I mean, you have to trust them to be able to speak, to their audience how they need to. But you still want to have some kind of protocol and message control in place. You'll see on the left some communication guidelines we developed for an MPCA outreach project in 2017. Next is outreach. And I'd say this is the most important part. How and to whom you say it, right? You can have all sorts of fancy engagement strategies in place, awesome messages, awesome questions, but if nobody shows up, it doesn't matter. Right? You need to establish the roles of the different people that are assisting you with outreach. You need to gather and use communication assets from stakeholders, right? How can you leverage what your partners have in place to get the word out? What are your methods? High tech, what are you going to use online, but also high touch, meaning, you are going to go where you need to go to talk to people and convince them to get engaged. I can't stress enough the importance of getting trusted community leaders as the messengers. In many places, people either local government may not be trusted, or it may be disregarded. But other local leaders can help spread the word and you get people engaged. And you need to track who is engaged. This is very, very important, because you may notice over your outreach effort that you have some gaps in certain portions of your community, either demographically or geographically. And you want to be able to then modify your strategies to make sure they're engaged. This is really, I consider this not that complicated, but it really does require diligence and time and resources. And then the final part is engagement. How do you get them to respond? What will you do with stakeholders when you have their attention? Education is a key part of it. You want to let them know what you're doing, but you also need to ask them questions. I recommend starting with the general and moving to the specific, going from the visioning to the regulatory. Start with a positive. But here I recommend strongly to listen closely and avoid unnecessary corrections. Somebody may be responding with something that is just factually incorrect. At some point, you might need to correct them. But if you overemphasize your corrections, people are going to turn away. They're going to say, this is not for me. And you need to be willing to accept harsh criticisms. You need to just grin and bear it. You need to meet the needs of the stakeholders too, especially when it comes to community meetings. A convenient time and location. Don't have an outreach meeting at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday at town hall. You're not going to get the people you need there. You need to consider food. What about childcare? And for those communities with non-English speakers, you need to have translated materials. I'm not going to go over this slide. I'm not going to read it to you, but here's just some examples of general questions or activities that you could do once you have people's attentions. Have their attention. So here's some different engagement methods. You need to mix up your methods. Some stakeholders will gravitate towards some rather than others. Some will love to do everything online. Some people will only want to show up in person. You need to summarize and categorize what you're hearing. Provide instant feedback. It's very, very important at public workshops to ensure staff coverage. You could also have stakeholders or advisory group help. You're going to be doing breakout rooms, mapping and other exercises, and answering questions. It's not going to be effective if you don't have enough staff to cover. You need to train key stakeholders and community leaders to assist and lead. Something that's fun, you could do matching T-shirts. Let people know for the staff. Let people know who's working on this. Something that I find particularly intriguing is a meeting in a box. This is where you're not going to get people to come to town hall or to a public workshop, but if you have a community leader who can take a meeting and all the materials for a meeting and go do a meeting without staff there, you can really get some valuable information. This takes a bit of trust, but this is also where the communication protocols come into play and training comes into play. But this is one way to reach hard to reach communities. You need to determine and clearly communicate how you will use input before you get it. Will it help with visioning? How about thematic organization? How will you track the demographics of engaged stakeholders? And how will you adjust to respond if certain demographic groups are underrepresented? What about input that does not inform the comp plan? What are you going to do with that? You need to think about how you're going to, what about big ideas versus smaller cumulative responses? How are you going to distinguish between those two? How are you going to use those? How will the final plan summarize input and or include complete feedback in an appendix? And you need to consider the distinction between and relation of qualitative and quantitative input. How do you compare use notes from a breakout or focus group versus survey responses?